Okay, so here we go. So tonight we're talking about communication, good communication in our home. Again, the goal, class. What's our goal of marriage? Unity, oneness, right? Oneness, unity. So this is not going to happen unless we're on the same page. It's not going to happen, right? Amos 3:3 says this: "Can two walk together except they be agreed?" Right? We know these verses, and I think we've all had those days in our marriage when things are just not clicking between a husband and wife. You ever been there? You have those? No, not you guys. Oh, it's just us then. But it just seems like we're just like keep going on the wrong foot. It's just like it just doesn't happen. It's just not happening. So when those things are when we're doing those kind of things, she's not picking up what I'm laying down, right? And what kind of day is that going to be? That's not going to be a good day. It's not going to be a good day at all. It's not good. So the answer to Amos and the answer, can a husband and wife be one flesh without good communication, is no way. It's not going to happen, right? So openness and honesty are essential in any good relationship. We would all agree, right? We all know lots of people, co-workers, church folks, neighbors, just on the surface. Just on the surface, hey, how you doing, neighbor? And that's fine, right? How's the weather, sports, family, that kind of stuff. But to really get to know somebody, it takes time. It takes time. It takes communication at a deeper level. In Proverbs 23:7, you have to turn there, but it says, "For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he." We know these verses, and it's not who I pretend to be. It's not who you pretend to be, or who we say we are, but it's what we think in our heart, in our spirit, in our mind. And it takes time to learn that. We have to open that up and see. Down through the years, in the honeymooners class, if you've been to our Christmas parties, right? We have the ping pong tournament, and I can look around. There's some competitive people in this room, and I won't mention any names, but I'm looking at one pretty, but you don't know this, right, until you spend time together. And we've had some great times. We have some great times, but you spend time together and you get to know people. It's like, oh, okay, all right, so this is who people are, right? But in marriage, we have plenty of time, right? We have nothing but time, right, to get to know each other. But it takes time to open up and allow ourselves to be known. Right? It takes time to know the real you. Have you ever had one of those moments, and it's like, who did I marry? Who are you? Right? You ever have those kind of moments? And sometimes we hold back and we're just kind of shy or whatever, and we think, man, if I really let her know who I am, man, she's or it's the other way around. But sometimes we hold back. Maybe sometimes we're shy or whatever, but sometimes we don't want to say things or petty things, little things. But there's in our marriage, there's ways. There's this stuff that comes between us, between you and your spouse, right? This is where good communication is so vital, because stuff just pops up, just stuff grows between us, right? We're different. Let's just be honest. We're different for sure. A man's mind versus a woman's mind, we think totally different, right? You've seen illustrations of that before, I know, in marriage classes, marriage stuff. But our tolerance levels are just those type of things are different. Our spiritual maturity might be different, right? Our spiritual temperature might be different, right? And we can be very different in very many things, and all this stuff is coming at us, right? All this stuff is coming at us, good things, bad things, the kids, a phone call from somebody, work demands, all this stuff, and on it goes. We are being pulled apart as a husband and wife, but the goal is oneness, and it is so important to maintain good communication. We're busy. Sometimes you have to schedule some time, right? I remember with the kids, like in the summertime when the kids were small, And summertime, man, their bedtimes kind of creep out there later. And like, man, you can't wait for school to start to get them back in bed at 8 o'clock or whatever. And then, hey, honey, remember me? We can have a talk. We can have these conversations. But make time. You might have to make time to communicate, but it's very important. So we're going to start in Ephesians chapter 4. This Ephesians chapter 4. There's so much. I was just reading this. Just in this regular devotions, there's so much about communications in Ephesians chapter 4. But we're going to start in verse 1. And Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 1, it says this: I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that ye walk worthy of the vocation wherewith ye are called. Walk worthy. Walk worthy of Christ. Walk worthy of Christ. And you think, well, what does that have to do with our communication? Well, it has everything to do with our communication. We're to walk worthy of Christ. We're to live in a manner befitting our divine call. We can't just do do whatever we want. Man, we're bought with a price. Christ has paid a huge price for us, right? So as a Christian, we're not just a Sunday Christian, it's an everyday Christian, right? How I treat my wife reflects on my Savior, or what I think, or what I believe about my Savior, right? He says, you hear that, oh, he says he's a Christian, but this is what he does, blah, 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 right? You've heard that before. How I communicate with my wife, with the kids, right? That matters. It matters. We need to walk worthy of being called a Christian. When I was growing up, I think I told this story before, but we had this good Irish Catholic family across the street, the McManamans. And the dad was a Sergeant McManaman, Cleveland Police, right? And they had probably 10, 12 kids, and it was just a fight a minute. They were across the street, and it was just like, hey, look what the McManamans are doing today. They're out there, fighting, rolling around and just going at it, always screaming and yelling. The mom is coming out, and the kids are running away, and it was always something else. It was always something going on. It was evident that they weren't Christian folks, but man, we're to walk worthy. That shouldn't be us in the neighborhood. I don't know what your neighbors think of you guys. I'd like to think we have as a Christian, we have a testimony that we're walking worthy. So, this matters about our communication. It matters so much about our communication. We need to walk worthy because it matters. Verse 2, it tells us how. How are we to walk worthy? Verse 2, it says this: with all lowliness and meekness, with long suffering, forbearing one another in love. That's how it tells us. That's how we can communicate. So this is our lifestyle, right? This is our lifestyle. So is this the relationship that we have, right? Is this the relationship that we have? That with all lowliness and meekness, with long suffering, forbearing one another, is in love. With lowliness, that's humility, right? Humility. Are we walking in humility in our house? As a dad, as a wife, are we walking with humility? Meekness, it talks about meekness. That's just gentleness, right? Then it talks about long suffering. We talked about that before. Long suffering, you get it, right? Long suffering. And sometimes with the kids, maybe a sick kid, that's a long suffering night, right? You're taking turns as a husband and wife, but those are the type of things here. And then this forbearing one another in love. Is this you? Is this your family? Is this your marriage? This is where we should be, walking worthy, right? And not all communication is verbal, right? I think we all know that. Holding the door, that's an easy thing to do. Holding the door for your wife, holding the door for your kids, helping out with this, putting your dirty dishes in the sink. Imagine that, or put them right in the dishwasher, if you have one of those things, right? But listen, it's in love, right? You do these things one another in love, forbearing one another in love. That's where we're to be. So in our communication. So do you ever talk to somebody? And hopefully this isn't your wife, but there's always trying to manipulate the whole conversation. Do you ever talk to those kind of people? And you end up. Wait a minute. I owe you $10. It's just somebody that's always they're always twisting things, right? Or you talk to those kind of people, or the old one-upper. You're talking to somebody, they always got to one-up you, these kind of conversations, or the yeah, but, right? Yeah, but, they go on these things. Or you're talking to somebody, and they're always trying to win an argument. They're always trying to be right. They always try to make themselves right. Well, that's not what we're to be as a Christian. Ephesians 4, 1 and 2, that's not what we're talking about, right? Look at verse 3. It says this, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Endeavoring to keep that. It's struggling, striving. How much are we striving to have peace in our home? Or are we just trying to live our life and, hey, I'm winning every argument, I'm getting my way? Is that the kind of thing? So that's why I say this thing about communication, it's Ephesians chapter 4, 1 through 3. That's where it's at. So this is what our Christian life should be about, and certainly what our marriages should be about, right? For us to have have good communication is based on openness and honesty. We talked about that before. There's some things in our marriage that we just kind of overlook, right? We can overlook little annoyances. Right, little annoyances. Let's look in 1 Peter chapter 4. And again, this is communication. This goes right to communication. 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 8. Can somebody read that? Go ahead, Gibby.
And above all things have fervent charity among yourselves, for charity shall cover the multitude of sins.
Right. Above these things, have fervent charity, right? Charity shall cover a multitude of sins. Those are little annoyances, right? This is communication in our homes. This is exactly what it is, a communication. I'm sure if I ask for a raise of hands, is there anything that your spouse annoys you with? I'm not going to do that. I wouldn't do it. I'm not going to do it. But here, I will tell you one. I'll tell on myself. So yes, I am 5 years old. At home, I drink milk. And I put Nestle Quick, the chocolate stuff in it. I'm 5, okay? But to my defense, she gets skim milk. There's like nothing. It's like chalk, right? So I got to do something. So I put I put the chocolate in. Sometimes I'll even go with chocolate and strawberry. Really, really go crazy. And so then I mix it up, and I stir it up, and I stir it up. And what you hate is when it's not all stirred. It drives me crazy. So I stir and I stir, and apparently it's an annoyance to my wife. And she goes on this thing of, okay, she's like, okay, I'm forbearing. And then I just keep stirring because I'm just trying to get it stirred. And then she'll get to this point like, all right, stop, just stop it. I can't take it anymore, right? But those are the kind of things. We can overlook some things because why? Love, fervent charity. We can overlook a few things. Whatever it is, you missed a hamper with the dirty clothes or whatever it is, right? We can overlook those kind of things. Now, and this is talking about communication. In our day-to-day thing, this is where the rubber meets the road. Now, there's other times it's time to confront, right? It's time to confront a spouse. If it's causing damage, maybe physical damage, maybe spiritual damage to the cause of Christ, we have to confront. Right? There's a time for that. Some wrong viewing habits. Like we see something on the internet. There's somebody's watching something on the internet and like, whoa, what are you doing? Right? There's time to confront. That's the kind of stuff. Anymore, it seems like, and this is a silly illustration, but everywhere you look, gambling everywhere. It's all the advertising and everyone's talking about it. Now, as a Christian, should we be involved in that? Absolutely not, right? The Bible talks about that. We shouldn't be involved in that. So if your wife is, putting some money down on the Lakers-Denver game, on the playoffs, like, hey, we got to confront this. There's a problem here, right? We have to confront this. So there's 6 things in the book that was talking about these biblical principles that that can and should guide us in these things about communication. Sometimes it's an overlook. Right? And sometimes there's time to confront. So these are 6 good things. They're very good. So number 1, is it really true? Ask yourself this. Before we have this conversation, is it really true? Do I have all the facts? right? Do I have all the facts? How many times have you, or maybe you again, maybe it's just me, we jump to a conclusion not knowing all the facts? Oh, what? You did that. Wait a minute. No, I was, right? We've been there. Let's look in Proverbs, book of wisdom. So many things in Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 18. And it talks to this very thing. Proverbs chapter 18 and verse 13. Can somebody read that? Anybody? Right, and that's what we're doing, right? We just jump to a conclusion. We have this thing in our mind. We're already, you're signed, sealed, delivered. You're guilty before we even go there. But the Bible here says, "He that answers a matter before hearing it." Right, and that's the exact thing. Is it really true? Do I have all the facts? Is she really putting the money down? Is she really? She's just talking about it. Is she really talking about it, or she's really putting the money down? Right. So, is it really true? Number two. Is what I would like to say profitable? Is what I'd like to say profitable? Will this help or hurt? Will this build up or tear down? Look right there in Proverbs again, Proverbs chapter 20, verse 15. It says this, Proverbs 20:15 says, "There is gold and a multitude of rubies, but the lips of knowledge are a precious jewel." Right? So there's gold and there's rubies and all this other stuff, but man, the lips, the words, a precious word. A precious word, it's a precious jewel. Words are so powerful, right? So words are so powerful. They can build up, they can tear down. With our kids, we can build up and we can tear down. I can remember some conversations that I had with my parents. That was a few years ago, and I remember these conversations, and it was pretty much not me doing a lot of the talking, but my mom and dad, right, doing a lot of the talking. But I can remember these things if it was just like today, right? They're powerful. Words are very powerful. Words are very powerful. Some jerk calls me a stranger because I'm driving, I cut somebody off or whatever. You idiot, whatever. Okay, I'm just keep driving. But if my wife calls me a jerk, hey, wait a minute, right? Now that matters because her attitude towards me, or she knows me, that matters, right? Now she hasn't done that today for a while, right? But she says that. But listen, we can encourage with our lips. It's precious, right? The Bible says, but the lips of knowledge are a precious jewel. We can encourage a text, right? A note, "I'm praying for you." Right? Those are precious things. When you're going through a trial, those are precious. Those are precious. You know what? Money can't buy, "Hey, I'm praying for you." Right? Money can't buy that kind of stuff. It's precious. And that's the kind of thing we're talking about. That we can this is our communication. Should I say something? I should be very careful what I say, right? Number 3, is this a proper time for me to say this? Maybe just wait. Maybe just wait. Look at Proverbs chapter 25. Proverbs chapter 25 and verse 11. Can somebody read that? I'm going to drag it out of you guys. You're all here, but come on. You got to be here. Proverbs 25:11. Can somebody? Yes, go ahead, Gloria.
"A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold and pictures of silver."
Right. A timely, fitting word is awesome. It's timeless. It's precious. It's precious. So, to put this in reality, how about this? No bomb dropping before bed. You're going to sleep, and all of a sudden somebody perks up with, "Hey, oh, by the way, blah 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 blah." No, wait, what? And then it's on for 2 hours. All right, that's not the time. Or when you don't have time to talk, when you're busy schedule. That's not the time. That's not the time. Is this a proper time? Maybe just wait until there is a precious time. Now, you can't just ignore things and just kind of keep pushing it under the rug and just keep pushing it. Yeah, I got to talk, but I can't talk now, right? It's not that. But we got to make sure that we're not too busy. Make sure there is time to have these conversations. Because, again, communication is very important for us, right? How about number 4? Is my attitude right? Is my attitude right in what I'm saying? So if you're starting this conversation off by saying, I told you so, that's probably a good sign that your attitude is not right. Let's look at Ephesians chapter 4. Back in Ephesians chapter 4. Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 15. And Pastor Pete just read this last night at the school thing. But it's so important. Ephesians chapter 4 verse 15 says, but speaking the truth in love may grow up into him in all things, which is the head, even Christ. But speaking the truth in love, that's where we're at. That's where we're at. Listen, nobody wants to be talked down to. I don't care how old we are. Nobody wants to get talked down to. Remember that when you're a kid and some, nobody likes that, especially as adults. Man, you're at work and somebody tries to, that kind of thing. Nobody wants that. But here it talks about the truth without love. It's nothing, right? 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter. Without this, without all these things, without love, it's worthless. All this stuff is worthless. You might have the truth, you might be dead right, but if you're not speaking in love, it's just an argument. You're just being talked down to, right? Maybe there's a time. Hey, honey, can we talk about this Sports Time Ohio kind of thing? Just in a nice way, we could talk about this. But they're just yelling and accusing and But asking questions are always a better way than making statements, right? When we're talking. So is my attitude right? Am I speaking the truth in love? If somebody comes up to me and says, "Hey, Kevin," in love, they're trying to help me. I can remember some teachers in school and some people in the church. Hey, I'm trying to help you. It matters, right? But if somebody just points out, "Hey, Don, you did this," and that's not going to help. That's not going to help. Right away, you put your defenses up, right? So it's the same thing with our communication with a husband and wife. Is my attitude right? Oh, this one, number 5. Are the words that I will use the best way to say it? Maybe we should think before we speak. Yeah, sometimes that's always a good idea, right? Let's look back in Proverbs. Three verses in Proverbs, and we could keep going in Proverbs. There's so many of these, but Proverbs 15:1. You probably know this verse. Proverbs 15:1. It says this: a soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. We all know that, right? Right off, if somebody gets, start a conversation with somebody who has their finger in your face, right away, your guard goes up and it's on, right? But a soft answer turneth away wrath. A soft answer turneth away wrath. It's not always good to respond right away. It's not always good. Sometimes you just need to slow down, take some time, right? Proverbs 15, verse 23. Proverbs 15:23 says this: a man hath joy by the answer of his mouth, and a word spoken in due season, how good is it? I think we've all agreed with that. A man has joy by the answer of his mouth. You come home from work, and maybe somebody had a bad day, and okay, all right, let me check this. Let me think. How am I going to respond? Because I could respond in kind, and we can have a bad day. We can have a bad evening. But we can have joy, right? We can have joy by the answer of our mouth, by thinking what we're saying. And this is so important in a husband and wife relationship. Proverbs chapter 12. Proverbs chapter 12 and verse 25. Can somebody read that one? Proverbs 12:25. Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Heaviness in the heart of man maketh it stoop, but a good word maketh it glad.
Right. Our words have power. We need to use them wisely, right? Heaviness in the heart of a man or a woman. You come home from work, again, these are just, I can remember these kind of days, and my wife's struggling with the kids or whatever, and you could just see. You could see. You don't have to be a genius to read this, but heaviness in the heart maketh a man stoop, but a good word maketh it glad. Trying to make a cheerful thing. Try to be an encourager. Try to be an encouragement. Our words matter. Our words matter. But think. We got to think before we act, before we accuse, before we do these things. And then lastly, number 6 is: have I prayed about this matter? Am I trusting God to help me? Have I prayed about this thing? When you're going to have this conversation with your spouse about things, have I prayed about it? Have we prayed about it? Sometimes it's the most obvious thing we should do, and sometimes we just skip right over that. We skip that step. Let's look at Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And again, it's the verses that we all know. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. Stop. So right there, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. So if I have this thing, all right, this is what I'm going to do. I can calculate this thing out with my spouse. I know how he's going to respond. I know how she's going to respond. I got this, okay, I'll say this. I'll set him up with this, and I'll do this, and try to, no, we're not trusting in God. We're trusting in our own wisdom and what we think, right? Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thy own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path. Is God helping me? If I'm not acknowledging him, if I'm not praying, if I'm not asking, why would he, right? Why should he, right? But if we're acknowledging him, again, God, we have this thing in our marriage. You have to do something. We have to work this thing out. This thing is about communication. This thing about whatever, finance, whatever it is. We need help there. And then look at Psalms chapter 19. Psalms chapter 19. This is good. Psalms 19, 14. This goes back to, are we walking worthy, right? Psalms 19:14 says, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Verses that we know, that we probably memorize, right? As little kids, or we've learned these things. But this is where we're at. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. Why is this important? Because what we meditate, what we think about, it's going to come out, right? It's going to come out in our communication with our spouse. Who or what are we listening to, right? Who or what are we listening to? As a Christian, what are we thinking about? What are we meditating on? And this is going to come out in our speech, especially with our spouse. So, just in closing, a thought of prayer, but prayer for your spouse, right? Praying for our spouse. Ladies, your husband needs your prayers. All husbands do, right? All husbands do. I know, because I am one, right? As a husband, to lead like I should, to love like I should, pray for safety, for strength, that he would honor God, in what he says and what he does. So let's be honest. Guys, it's not us. That's not us. That's not our natural bend. But that's where we need to be. That's where we need to be. We need to be striving for that. We need your prayers, ladies. We need your prayers. Husbands, we need to pray for your wife, for strength, for safety, for wisdom. Wisdom with the kids. So many times the kids go to the mom, right, as the coach. Dad will kind of rough them up and yeah, all right, you know, get back in the game, right? But a mom, they'll come up to the mom and talk. She's the coach, and it's so important. It's so important that she gives wise, godly counsel. We need to pray, guys. We need to pray for her spouse. Pray for your wife that she'll have this, that she'll submit herself to the Lord, fulfill her role as a godly mother, right, and a wife. It's one of the most often neglected forms of communication, but it's one of the most important things, right? I think we'd all agree with that. So, how are we doing? So, how are we doing so far in our communication? How are we doing so far? Are we walking? Are we talking worthy? Are we? That's the question. There's probably something we can work on. I would think there's probably something we can work on. We're just going to stop it at this point. For just sake of time, but I think there's stuff that we can work on. I think we're honest. This thing of communication is so important for us. We need God's help. We definitely need God's help.